The simple answer, no, I can't remember, because it was 40 years ago and I have a blind spot about anything. People keep asking, what books do you read as a child? I vaguely remember Richard Scarry. That seems a little bit to undershoot this. And then I remember it all kicking into focus when I was about 14, when I went through a science fiction, then into science phase. But that was probably the point where I'm stepping into actual sort of grown-up popular science books. So Chaos by James Gleick, or John Gribben's In Search of Schrodinger's Cat, and books that actually were about physics and space and stuff. But the age, weirdly the age I'm writing for with these books, I don't remember what was a specific one. I'm sure there are books about space. I'm sure there are books about stuff, and I'm not castigating. We didn't invent this particular generation, but there wasn't one particular one when I was like 12, a little bit older. Which is older than I'm writing for, then it kicked in. There isn't a huge creation myth for these things. It was a conversation with publishers, to be honest, and also I've been doing Stargate for about 10 years now, so we've gotten very used to enthusing about science. I make no claims to be the expert on these things, but I can enthuse and I can communicate it, and the perfect audience for that. I'd like to leave the public science books that scientists write, that part of the market is great for them, because they come out with their expertise. I'm the one then sort of second-handedly taking those ideas, zhuzhing them up with jokes, and then cherry picking the best parts to get to the audience at their most curious age. When you write a book like this, the flow of ideas is kind of sort of similar in a certain way, and then it's actually weirdly not that dissimilar to a book I wrote for grown-ups called Tickling the English last year. Except of course that you just sort of tailor the stuff you think they'll find more interesting. But I write in a fairly open style anyway, a fairly open conversational style, and so I tend to read it with a view to how well it flows and how well the thing reads as a smooth read, if you know what I mean. Much like you would if you're doing a comedy show, you wanted to roll very naturally from topic to topic to topic. So so the audience go, "Oh, was that an hour?" And that's done. So that kind of trick you're using kind of, it's kind of about pacing it as much as anything else, but with the extra heft of being able to sprinkle in actual facts rather than just comic inventions. Weirdly, I'm not too worried about them being regarded as dry. I think the one difference I have is that non-fiction, as I've seen it with my own kids, has a tendency to be big on the graphic presentation of it, big on facts and pockets of facts here and there around the page, and they're gorgeous big glossy books, whatever. But one that can actually just be read, that flows as almost like a story. And this should read like a story. You wake up in the morning, this is what's happened to your hair, and why is that? Oh my God! And then before you know it, you've gone through the whole day. This should flow through as one piece of reading. It should be something that you could read too. I find it kind of frustrating that you can't really read a big book of dinosaurs to kids, because it tends to be a giant picture of dinosaurs with an arrow pointing to its foot, and you kind of have to get their eye to go to here, and then get their eye to go to here, and then look over it here, and here's another fact about that, like whatever, as opposed to something which should just, and here we are, and where are we waking up, and this is what's going to happen, and it should just roll. It should just roll until the point where you go, right, well, you've had 10 pages, time for sleep. I think that those books are gorgeous and glossy and fantastic, but they're, I suppose, a little bit like, modern museum design, which is all about, this is so fantastic and interactive, and I feel it has a tendency to go in one eye and out the other, in the glossiness of it all. This one should feel like a conversation. To be honest, no. Again, it's this is just the way I write, and it's a style of writing that I've used both in print, and in spoken word for some time now, and it's kind of, it's managed to get me along this far as the thing. So no, it's only later, actually, after I'd written the thing, that I sat down. Again, comedian trait, you don't try out your material on one person, because if that one person doesn't like it, then you'll just go, well, this is obviously rubbish. Whereas 2,000 people have a kind of a more nuanced view. Half of them can like it. You're taking a 50-50 shot on half the audience laughing out loud, and you'd be delighted with half the audience laughing out loud. So I didn't try this stuff out until afterwards. Then I tried reading it out. Actually, I was reading it with the kids who were enjoying it, but I felt like I found I was added in more. So probably the lesson isn't necessarily we change the way I write, but if you're reading it, feel free to add in more. You're not short of choices in terms of non-fiction. I mean, there are huge shelves of brilliant books about whatever topic they get into. I mean, we made a virtue in this book of going, right, there's stuff in this that you love, and stuff you actually won't like that much. So skip the bit you don't like that much. Like find the stuff you love, because the thing about no more than fiction, I suppose, but the thing about non-fiction is it is about specialising. It is about their kids' passions, I suppose. So I suppose start general and burrow down, not narrow down in the way that you're limiting stuff, but dive deep. So find the thing that they really enjoy. So I suppose it's go general, and then start listening to what they're really into. God, the thing about there are always more difficult stuff that you can do, and I suppose the more abstract it got, the more difficult it is to earth it in their experience. So the electromagnetic waves is a tough one that's worth saying again. In fact, the electromagnetic field, which is difficult to explain at the best of times to grown-ups, that the notion that we basically swim in this basically sea of potentialities of the forces of electromagnetism, that it's all around us at all times, like whatever. It's an abstract concept and a difficult one to get. It's easier to talk about sleeping giraffes than it is to talk about something incredibly abstract. But the flip side, if you can get them into that and possibly get into waves, then it opens a whole other more general view of things. In the very first book we did was about space, and I made a point of quietly teaching it in a relativistic universe, which basically means rather than teaching gravity as a string that connects two things, we went straight to teaching it about how it's space itself which is bent and planets kind of fall into things. And it kind of useful if you can get them over the hump of that and get them used to a weird idea, then you don't have to correct things later in life. I don't think you should ever fear additional questions. I mean, I know none of us can answer them, but it's still a fine, healthy sign that they're asking them. So, yeah, sorry, you have to go and do some Wikipediaing maybe, but listen, if your kid's asking extra questions, then well done on that kid. I'm intrigued to see that that for kids, because I tend to balance my reading 50-50 between the two, but then I also, because the TV show do get sent every science book, popular science book ever published, but I tend to bounce between that and the others, because it's an interesting one that we don't do it as much with kids. I think there's a fear of reading it with kids, that they'll find it less interesting or specific, or I think we have a tendency to think of things in terms of it being a subject rather than it being an interesting thing in itself, and I think that's just the way the years of schooling have taught us to do. I think the age at which I'm writing for, they still have it as a kind of a sense of wonder thing, rather than the point where it's actually picking topics that you'll be examined on, and there'll be some stuff that you don't really want to be doing, but oh god, I'm sitting in chemistry and therefore chemistry is dull, and that happens a little bit later. Yeah, it's interesting that I suppose you always choose to read a story to kids, and I think we could easily shake ourselves out of that, like whatever. The world is not short of books about dinosaurs in space. Let's put it that way. If anything, we could probably talk about something else other than dinosaurs in space, as says a man who wrote a book about space. But there is a lot of stuff out there that they can find with the extra heft of it being real. But yeah, I think we may need to just move that dial slightly more towards it, because at bedtime it's just in our heads, bedtime stories. Not bedtime readings, but bedtime stories. I think we take them maybe a little bit too literally at times. There's an element of, in both books, there is a kind of a pain at the end to learning more about this, and finding the bit of it you really, really enjoy. And in space, it was about Yeah, I know you all want to be astronauts, but actually you can also build robots and they can go investigate space. Or you can sit here and you can watch space come to you. And then the broader equivalent of that, when we wrote Secret Science was about all general science. So it wasn't just about physics, it was about hormones in the brain and neurotransmitters, and it was about animal sleep patterns, and it was about engines on airplanes. And so there was an actual thing that we said, a kind of a mission statement that put and start going, listen, there'll be bits in this that you might not enjoy, and that's okay. Because actually, what happens is anyway over life is we all find the ones that we're particularly passionate about, like whatever. And then there's a bit, and I said, keep track of which ones you really loved and which ones you didn't love. And then at the back of the book, there's a whole section going, right, did you like that bit? You probably want to be a neurologist, or like that bit, you would like to be an engineer. And it's not like I want to pigeonhole your children and start doing career guidance on them, but there's definitely, they should know to unburden themselves of the stuff that they find less interesting, and know that there's a world of more information on the ones they do like, because that's what's going to happen as adults anyway. So they might as well find the ones that they're really passionate about.